Jacob's life is nothing short of an epic tale, weaving together themes of faith, cunning deceit, and eventual redemption. This remarkable story resonates through the generations, offering timeless lessons for us all. In a world where cleverness and trickery often seem to gain the upper hand over honesty and moral uprightness, the life of Jacob forces us to face some challenging truths about both the flawed nature of humanity and God's higher, sovereign plan. Have you ever paused to consider how God, in His infinite wisdom, can take flawed, imperfect individuals and still use them as instruments to carry out His divine purposes? Prepare yourself for a fascinating and thought-provoking journey, one that will challenge your understanding of both justice and mercy as we delve into the unexpected beginnings of a nation chosen by God. Genesis 25:21 brings us into the story of a couple facing deep distress and personal struggle. Isaac prayed to the Lord on behalf of his wife because she was barren. The Lord answered his prayer, and his wife Rebekah became pregnant. In the culture of ancient times, being barren was often regarded as a curse or sign of disfavor, and Rebekah bore the heavy weight of this stigma for 2 long decades. Picture the depth of sorrow and despair that must have filled the hearts of Isaac and Rebekah, the designated heirs to the great promise made to Abraham, yet seemingly unable to bring forth the next generation. God's response to Isaac's heartfelt prayer came, but it was not without its own challenges. Genesis 25:22-23 describes, "The babies jostled each other within her, and she said, 'Why is this happening to me?' So she went to inquire of the Lord. The Lord said to her, 'Two nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples from within you will be separated. One people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger.'" Rebekah's turbulent pregnancy was a prophetic sign, foreshadowing the intense conflict that would not only shape the destinies of her 2 sons, but would also ripple across entire nations. This divine revelation challenged and overturned the customary order of society, where the firstborn traditionally held dominance. Even before their birth, it was decreed that the younger would take precedence over the elder, reversing the expected order of inheritance and leadership. Through this declaration, God was establishing a pattern that would upend human expectations and challenge deeply ingrained social norms. The dramatic moment of birth is recounted in Genesis 25:24-26. When the time came for her to give birth, there were twin boys in her womb. The first to come out was red, and his whole body was like a hairy garment, so they named him Esau. After this, his brother came out with his hand grasping Esau's heel, so he was named Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when Rebekah gave birth to them. From the very moment of their birth, the stark differences between the twins were apparent. Esau, the elder of the twins, was marked by his red, hairy appearance, physical traits that seemed to prefigure his bold and impulsive temperament. Jacob, by contrast, entered the world with his tiny hand gripping Esau's heel, a symbolic act that hinted at his future as a cunning and resolute individual. As the twins grew into young men, the distinct differences in their personalities and lifestyles became even more apparent. Genesis 25:27-28 provides a vivid description. The boys grew up, and Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of the open country, while Jacob was content to stay at home among the tents. Isaac, who had a taste for wild game, loved Esau, but Rebekah loved Jacob. Esau developed into an outdoorsman, a skilled and adventurous hunter, embodying the archetype of the rugged man admired in that era. Jacob, on the other hand, was introspective and preferred a quieter, more domestic existence, staying among the tents and tending to household matters. The contrasting personalities of the twins found a reflection in their parents' divided affections. Isaac was drawn to Esau, admiring his skill and vigor, while Rebekah's heart leaned toward Jacob, whose demeanor resonated with her more deeply. This blatant favoritism set the stage for future conflicts, providing a timeless warning about the strife and division that can arise when children are treated unequally by their parents. A seemingly minor incident during the brothers' youth would prove to be a pivotal moment, carrying deep and lasting consequences for their lives. Genesis 25:29-34 narrates the story. Once when Jacob was cooking some stew, Esau came in from the open country. Famished, he said to Jacob, "Quick, let me have some of that red stew." "I'm famished," That is why he was also called Edom. Jacob replied, "First sell me your birthright." "Look, I am about to die," Esau said. "What good is the birthright to me?" But Jacob said, "Swear to me first." So he swore an oath to him, selling his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau some bread and lentil stew. He ate and drank and then got up and left. So Esau despised his birthright. This brief yet impactful episode sheds significant light on the personalities and priorities of both Esau and Jacob. Esau, guided by his impulsive nature and consumed by his immediate hunger, recklessly gave up his birthright, a role of immense honor and duty within their patriarchal society, for nothing more than a meal. His dramatic declaration of being near death highlights his propensity for exaggeration and his inability to see beyond the demands of the moment. Jacob, in contrast, revealed a strategic and calculating side to his nature. Perceiving an opportunity, Jacob quickly capitalized on it, exploiting his brother's vulnerability to secure an advantage for himself. Though Jacob's behavior might be viewed as morally dubious from a modern perspective, it demonstrates his keen awareness of the birthright's significance and his unyielding determination to secure its privileges at any cost. This transaction, where Esau traded his birthright for a mere bowl of stew, became an enduring symbol of his carelessness and impulsive tendencies, juxtaposed with Jacob's opportunistic and calculated character. While the biblical account refrains from passing direct moral judgment on Jacob's actions in this instance, the unfolding story vividly illustrates how this pivotal choice significantly influenced the futures of both brothers and the generations that followed. The consequences of this seemingly simple act were far-reaching and profound. The birthright represented far more than just a material inheritance or tangible wealth. It embodied the promise of spiritual blessings and the crucial responsibility of leading the family lineage, especially under God's covenant. In scorning his birthright, Esau revealed a glaring shortcoming in foresight and a failure to recognize the immense value of the divine promises passed down from his forebears. For Jacob, this acquisition was merely the initial step in a larger journey toward claiming his position as the rightful heir to God's covenant promises. While his approach was undeniably controversial, Jacob's unwavering drive to obtain God's blessings would emerge as a defining characteristic throughout his life. This incident lays the groundwork for the unfolding chapters of Jacob's life, shaping his path and the challenges he would face. His shrewdness and relentless resolve would elevate him to remarkable achievements, yet these traits would also draw him into intense conflicts and perilous situations. Jacob's life serves as a powerful reminder that God, in his sovereignty, can work through our flaws and shortcomings to accomplish his grander purposes. Genesis 27:1-4 ushers us into a pivotal moment in Isaac's later years. When Isaac was old and almost blind, he called for his older son Esau and said, "My son." "Yes, father," he answered. Isaac said, "I am old and do not know the day of my death. Now take your weapons, your bow and your quiver, and go out to the field to hunt game for me. Prepare for me the delicious food I love, and bring it to me to eat, so that I may bless you before I die." Isaac's old age and failing eyesight introduced an atmosphere of urgency and vulnerability, highlighting the delicate nature of this pivotal moment. Cognizant of his impending mortality, Isaac felt compelled to carry out his solemn duty as a father by bestowing the traditional blessing upon his firstborn son before his passing. This act of blessing was far from a mere ritual. It carried immense prophetic weight and was destined to shape the future of the recipient and his lineage. Isaac's intention to bestow the blessing upon Esau underscores his enduring preference for his elder son, seemingly disregarding the earlier transaction where Esau relinquished his birthright to Jacob. It is possible that Isaac was either oblivious to the arrangement between his sons or did not regard it as legitimate. Nonetheless, his resolve to bless Esau set into motion a chain of events that would irreversibly alter the trajectory of their family story. Genesis 27:5-10 unveils Rebekah's bold and calculated plan to secure the blessing for Jacob, her favored son. Now Rebekah was listening when Isaac spoke to his son Esau. So when Esau went to the field to hunt for game, Rebekah said to her son Jacob, "I heard your father say to your brother Esau, Bring me game and prepare me the delicious food to eat so that I may bless you in the presence of the Lord before I die. Now, my son, listen to me as I command you. Go to the flock and bring me 2 choice young goats so that I can prepare some delicious food for your father, the kind he loves. Then take it to your father to eat so he may bless you before he dies." Rebekah's scheme was daring, fraught with risk, and required absolute precision to succeed. In orchestrating this deception, Rebekah directly opposed her husband's wishes and put Jacob in a precarious situation where exposure could bring serious consequences. Rebekah's actions were driven by a complex blend of motivations: her determination to see God's prophecy fulfilled, her clear favoritism toward Jacob, and perhaps her conviction that Jacob possessed the qualities necessary to lead the family effectively. Preparing the stew was merely the initial step in her intricate and high-stakes plan. Genesis 27:11-17 outlines the careful and elaborate disguise crafted to carry out the deception. But Jacob said to Rebekah, his mother, "But my brother Esau is a hairy man, and I am a smooth man. What if my father touches me? I would appear to be tricking him and bring down a curse on myself rather than a blessing." His mother said to him, "My son, let the curse fall on me. Just do what I say. Go and get them for me." So he went and got them and brought them to his mother, and she prepared the delicious food, the kind his father loved. Then Rebekah took the best clothes of Esau, her older son, which she had at home, and put them on her younger son Jacob. She also covered his hands and the smooth part of his neck with the goat skins. Then she handed to her son Jacob the delicious food and the bread she had made. This part of the narrative highlights Jacob's initial reluctance, which stemmed not from any moral objections, but rather from his fear of the potential consequences if their ruse was uncovered. Rebekah's unwavering response, accepting any potential curse upon herself, underscores her resolute determination to ensure the success of her carefully crafted plan. The use of Esau's garments and the meticulous application of goat skins illustrate the lengths to which they were willing to go to carry out the deception and ensure its believability. Genesis 27:18-29 recounts Jacob's tense and suspenseful encounter with Isaac, where every moment hangs precariously between success and exposure. Jacob approached his father and said, "My father." To this Isaac replied, "Yes, my son. Who are you, my son?" Isaac asked, "I am Esau, your firstborn. I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Please sit up and eat some of my game, so that you may bless me." Isaac, still suspicious, inquired. Jacob falsely answered, "How did you manage to find it so quickly, my son? The Lord your God gave me success." Isaac, harboring doubts, said to Jacob, "Come closer so that I may touch you, my son, and confirm whether you truly are Esau or not." The tension in this moment is palpable, as Jacob must maintain his charade under Isaac's growing suspicion. Jacob continues to lie throughout the encounter, going as far as invoking God's name to strengthen the believability of his deception. Isaac, still uncertain, insists on physically touching his son to verify his identity. Genesis 27:22-23 adds, Jacob approached his father Isaac, who touched him, saying, "The voice sounds like Jacob's, but the hands feel like Esau's." He did not recognize Jacob because his hands felt hairy like Esau's, and thus he proceeded to bless him. This moment, where Isaac's senses contradict each other, highlights his internal struggle and uncertainty about the true identity of the son before him. Isaac's senses clash, as his sense of touch suggests it is Esau, but the voice unmistakably belongs to Jacob. Choosing to trust the evidence of touch over the sound of the voice, Isaac ultimately decides to confer the blessing. The blessing Isaac pronounces over Jacob, as found in Genesis 27:27-29, is both profound and all-encompassing. Isaac, taking in the scent of the clothes Jacob wore, declared, "Ah, the smell of my son is like the aroma of a fertile field that the Lord has abundantly blessed. May God grant you the dew of heaven and the bountiful richness of the earth, with an overflowing harvest of grain and new wine. May nations serve you, and may peoples bow low before you. Be Lord over your brothers, and may the sons of your mother bow down to you. Cursed are those who curse you, and blessed are those who bless you." This blessing is filled with vivid imagery and grand promises, encompassing abundant material wealth, political supremacy, and a distinct spiritual position of favor. In an ironic twist, the blessing grants Jacob authority over his brothers, directly fulfilling the prophecy spoken about the twins before their birth. The dramatic return of Esau and the revelation of Jacob's deception are captured vividly in Genesis 27:30-35. As soon as Isaac had completed the blessing and Jacob had barely left the room, Esau returned from his hunting expedition. He too prepared some delicious food and brought it to his father. Then he said to him, "My father, sit up and eat some of my game, so that you may bless me." His father Isaac asked him, "Who are you?" "I am Esau, your firstborn," he answered. Isaac trembled violently and said, "Who was it then that hunted game and brought it to me? I ate it just before you came, and I blessed him, and indeed he will be blessed." Hearing these words, Esau let out a loud, bitter wail and pleaded with his father, "Bless me, even me also, O my father." But he said, "Your brother came deceitfully and took your blessing." Isaac's intense trembling reveals the depth of his shock and dismay upon realizing the full extent of the deception that had taken place. His firm statement, "And indeed he will be blessed," reflects his recognition that the blessing, once bestowed, carried a binding and irrevocable power. The blessing Isaac pronounced was no ordinary paternal wish. It carried the weight of a divine prophecy, destined to shape the lives of generations to come. The depth of Esau's heartbreak is unmistakable and deeply moving. Genesis 27:36-38 vividly portrays Esau's pain and frustration as he exclaimed, "Isn't he rightly named Jacob? This is the second time he has taken advantage of me. He took my birthright and now he's taken my blessing." Then he asked, "Haven't you reserved any blessing for me?" Isaac replied to Esau with regret, "I have made him lord over you and have made all his relatives his servants, and I have sustained him with grain and new wine. So what can I possibly do for you, my son?" Esau said to his father, "Do you have only one blessing, my father? Bless me too, my father." Then Esau wept aloud. Esau's profound anguish reveals not only the weight of his loss, but also his earlier inability to fully comprehend the immense value of the birthright he so carelessly discarded. It is only in this moment of irreversible loss that Esau comes to realize the true significance of what he has surrendered. Esau's heartfelt plea for even a fragment of a blessing is both touching and heartrending. In Genesis 27:39-40, Isaac grants Esau a secondary blessing, a bittersweet consolation in the shadow of what has been lost. His father Isaac answered him, "Your dwelling will be away from the earth's richness, away from the dew of heaven above. You will live by the sword, and you will serve your brother. But when you grow restless, you will throw his yoke from off your neck." Unlike Jacob's rich and promising blessing, Esau's foretold a life of hardship and strife, both for himself and his lineage. Yet amid the somber prediction, there lies a promise of eventual freedom from subjugation under Jacob. Esau's anger boils over into an immediate and deadly resolve, as Genesis 27:41 reveals. Esau harbored a deep grudge against Jacob for receiving their father's blessing. He thought to himself, "The days of mourning for my father are near. Then I will kill my brother Jacob." Esau's vengeful scheme underscores the depth of his wrath and the very real danger now hanging over Jacob's life. The severity of the situation calls for immediate and decisive action to prevent a tragedy. Genesis 27:42-45 describes Rebekah's urgent and carefully devised plan to ensure Jacob's escape from Esau's wrath. When Rebekah heard of Esau's intent, she summoned Jacob and warned him, "Esau is planning to kill you. You must act quickly. Then, my son, do what I say. Flee at once to my brother Laban in Haran. Stay with him for a while until your brother's fury subsides. When your brother is no longer angry and forgets what you did to him, I'll send word for you to come back from there. I cannot bear to lose both of you in a single day." This plan highlights Rebekah's resourcefulness and her ability to act decisively in the face of danger. Rebekah's actions not only shield Jacob from Esau's rage, but also preserved the family line, ensuring the fulfillment of God's promises. Rebekah's final remark reveals her dual concern. For Jacob's safety and for the spiritual and moral cost to Esau, should he commit fratricide. Jacob's departure to Haran, as detailed in Genesis 28:1-5, signifies the start of a transformative and defining chapter in his life. Isaac called for Jacob and blessed him. Then he commanded him, "Do not marry a Canaanite woman." Go at once to Padan Aram, to the house of your mother's father Bethuel. Take a wife for yourself there from among the daughters of Laban, your mother's brother. Take a wife for yourself there from among the daughters of Laban, your mother's brother. May God Almighty bless you abundantly, making you fruitful and multiplying your descendants until you become a great assembly of nations. May He extend to you and your descendants the same blessing He gave Abraham, enabling you to possess this land where you now dwell as a foreigner, the land promised to Abraham by God. With these blessings and instructions, Isaac sent Jacob on his journey to Padan Aram, to the household of Laban, the son of Bethuel the Aramean, and the brother of Rebekah, Jacob's mother. This moment shows that Isaac, even after being deceived, has come to accept God's plan and willingly reaffirms Jacob's blessing with full understanding. Isaac's directives regarding Jacob's marriage highlight the critical importance of preserving the covenant lineage by avoiding unions with the Canaanites. And so Jacob sets out on his journey, leaving in his wake a fractured family and a brother consumed with anger. Jacob's journey to Haran represents not merely a flight from danger, but the commencement of a profound spiritual evolution. The experiences that await Jacob will mold his character and prepare him for his destiny as Israel, the patriarch of the 12 tribes. Jacob's story of deception and eventual flight serves as a profound reminder that God, in His sovereignty, can transform even our flawed motives, whether driven by ambition or fear, into instruments of His divine plan. This account further underscores the enduring effects of our choices and highlights the intricate, often tumultuous, dynamics of family relationships. Genesis 28:10-11 sets the stage for Jacob's fateful journey toward Haran, where his life would take a significant turn. Jacob departed from Beersheba and began his journey to Haran. When he reached a certain place, he stopped for the night because the sun had set. Taking one of the stones there, he put it under his head and lay down to sleep. Picture Jacob for the first time in his life, completely alone, fleeing the comfort of his home and lying vulnerable in the wilderness with nothing but a stone as his pillow. In this moment of solitude and vulnerability, God intervenes powerfully, choosing to reveal Himself to Jacob in a profound and extraordinary manner. Genesis 28:12-15 recounts the pivotal moment when Jacob has a dream that would forever shape his understanding of God's presence and promises. He had a dream in which he saw a stairway resting on the earth with its top reaching to heaven, and the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. There above it stood the Lord, and He said, "I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham and the God of Isaac. I will give you and your descendants the land on which you are lying. Your descendants will be like the dust of the earth, and you will spread out to the west and to the east, to the north and to the south. All peoples on earth will be blessed through you and your offspring. I am with you and will watch over you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you." This remarkable vision of a stairway to heaven symbolizes the profound connection between heaven and earth and serves as a reassurance of God's continuous presence and involvement in Jacob's life. The promises conveyed in this vision reiterate the blessings granted to Abraham and Isaac, now extending them explicitly to Jacob as part of God's covenant. Jacob's reaction, detailed in Genesis 28:16-22, reflects a significant spiritual awakening and a deepening awareness of God's presence. When Jacob awoke from his sleep, he thought, "Surely the Lord is in this place, and I was not aware of it." He was afraid and said, "How awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God. This is the gate of heaven." Early the next morning, Jacob took the stone he had placed under his head and set it up as a pillar and poured oil on top of it. He called that place Bethel, though the city used to be called Luz. Then Jacob made a vow, saying, "If God will be with me and will watch over me on this journey I'm taking, and will give me food to eat and clothes to wear so that I return safely to my father's household, then the Lord will be my God. And this stone that I have set up as a pillar will be God's house, and of all that you give me I will give you a tenth." This declaration signifies the inception of a personal and covenantal relationship between Jacob and God. For the first time, Jacob recognizes and embraces God not solely as the deity of his ancestors, but as his own God. Jacob's arrival in Haran, as described in Genesis 29, 1 through 12, reaches a significant moment with his encounter with Rachel by the well. Jacob resumed his journey and eventually arrived in the territory of the eastern peoples. There he saw a well in the field with 3 flocks of sheep lying near it, because the flocks drank from that well. A large stone covered the mouth of the well. When all the flocks were gathered there, the shepherds would roll the stone away from the well's mouth and water the sheep. Then they would return the stone to its place over the mouth of the well. Jacob asked the shepherds, "My brothers, where are you from?" "We are from Haran," they replied. He asked them, "Do you know Laban, Nahor's grandson?" "Yes, we know him," they answered. Then Jacob asked, "Is he well?" "Yes, he is," they said. "And here comes his daughter Rachel with the sheep." "Look," Jacob said, "the sun is still high. It is not time for the flocks to be gathered. Water the sheep and take them back to graze." "We can't," they replied, "until all the flocks are gathered and the stone has been rolled away from the well's mouth. Then we will water the sheep." While he was still talking with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherdess. As soon as Jacob saw Rachel, daughter of Laban, his mother's brother and Laban's sheep, he went over and rolled the stone away from the well's mouth and watered his uncle Laban's sheep. Then Jacob kissed Rachel and began to weep aloud. He told Rachel that he was a relative of her father and that he was the son of Rebekah. She ran and told her father. This meeting at the well mirrors key moments in Jacob's family history, notably the story of Abraham's servant finding Rebekah at a well, which also marked the beginning of a divinely guided union. Jacob's feat of single-handedly removing the heavy stone from the well not only highlights his remarkable physical strength, but also reveals his eagerness to impress Rachel and gain her favor. The reunion between Jacob and Laban's family, as recounted in Genesis 29:13-14, is marked by warmth and heartfelt hospitality. As soon as Laban heard the news about Jacob, his sister's son, he hurried to meet him. He embraced him and kissed him and brought him to his home, and there Jacob told him all these things. Then Laban said to him, "You are my own flesh and blood." Laban's warm welcome soon transitions into a formal work arrangement, as detailed in Genesis 29:15-20, revealing his shrewd and calculating nature. Laban said to Jacob, "Because you are a relative of mine, should you work for me for nothing? Tell me what your wages should be." Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the older was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah had weak eyes, but Rachel had a lovely figure and was beautiful. Jacob was in love with Rachel and said, "I'll work for you 7 years in return for your younger daughter Rachel." Laban said, "It's better that I give her to you than to some other man. Stay here with me." So Jacob served 7 years to get Rachel, but they seemed like only a few days to him because of his love for her. The terms of this agreement highlight Jacob's profound love and unwavering commitment to Rachel, as well as Laban's cunning and opportunistic character. Jacob's 7 years of hard labor serve as an ironic reversal of his earlier life, where he relied on cunning and deceit to achieve his goals. The same Jacob who once deceived his father and brother now finds himself working with steadfast dedication for 7 long years. The account of Jacob's unexpected and deceptive marriage is vividly described in Genesis 29:21-25. Then Jacob said to Laban, "Give me my wife, for my time is completed that I may go into her." So Laban brought together all the people of the place and gave a feast. But when evening came, Laban took his daughter Leah and gave her to Jacob, and he slept with her. Laban gave his servant Zilpah to his daughter as her attendant. When morning came, there was Leah. So Jacob said to Laban, "What is this you have done to me? I served you for Rachel, didn't I? Why have you deceived me?" This situation is steeped in irony and cannot go unnoticed. Jacob, who once exploited his father's blindness to commit deception, now finds himself deceived under the cover of darkness on his wedding night. Jacob's anguished question, "Why have you deceived me?" serves as a poignant reflection of the very words Esau likely uttered to him years earlier, highlighting the cyclical nature of deceit. Laban's reply to Jacob's outrage, along with the new terms of their agreement, is detailed in Genesis 29:26-30. Laban replied, "It is not our custom to give the younger daughter in marriage before the older one finish this daughter's bridal week. Then we will give you the younger one in return for another 7 years of work." And Jacob did so. He finished the week with Leah, and then Laban gave him his daughter Rachel to be his wife. Laban gave his servant Bilhah to his daughter Rachel as her attendant. Jacob lay with Rachel also, and he loved Rachel more than Leah, and he worked for Laban another 7 years. As a result, Jacob ends up married to 2 sisters, a circumstance that sets the stage for intense rivalry and ongoing conflict within the family in the years ahead. Jacob's deep and preferential love for Rachel reflects the favoritism he experienced from his own parents, continuing a pattern of family tension and rivalry. The birth of Jacob's children takes place within a framework of ongoing competition and discord. Genesis 29 verses 31-35 and Genesis 30 verse 24 describe how Leah gave birth to Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah. Rachel, struggling with infertility, offers her servant Bilhah to Jacob, and Bilhah gives birth to Dan and Naphtali on Rachel's behalf. When Leah realizes she is no longer bearing children, she also gives her servant Zilpah to Jacob, who bears Gad and Asher for her. Later, Leah conceives once more and gives birth to 2 more sons, Issachar and Zebulun. At last, Rachel herself conceives and bears Joseph, the long-awaited son of her own body. This sequence of births is marked by an intense rivalry between the sisters, each vying to secure Jacob's affection and status through childbearing. The names chosen for these children often reveal the deep emotions, aspirations, and struggles of their mothers. Jacob's years in Haran saw him transform from a single man into the patriarch of a large and intricate family. Amid deceit, relentless labor, and family rivalries, Jacob starts to encounter the consequences of his earlier choices and actions. Yet amidst these challenges, God's promise to make Jacob into a great nation begins to unfold slowly but surely. In Genesis chapter 30, verses 25-28, we witness the emergence of Jacob's longing to return to his homeland. Following Rachel's delivery of Joseph, Jacob approached Laban saying, "Send me on my way so I may return to my homeland. Allow me to take my wives and children, for whom I have labored faithfully, and let me depart. You are well aware of the effort and dedication with which I have served you." But Laban responded, "If I have found favor in your eyes, I ask that you remain. I have discerned through divination that the Lord has blessed me on account of you," he continued. "Name your price and I will pay it." This interaction underscores the tension between Jacob's yearning to leave and Laban's determination to retain him, recognizing the prosperity Jacob's presence has brought. Jacob's remarkable success as a shepherd is detailed in Genesis chapter 30, verses 29-43. Jacob proposes what seems to be an unfavorable agreement for himself, requesting only the speckled and spotted animals from Laban's flock. Yet through a blend of strategic breeding practices and what appears to be divine intervention, Jacob's wealth grows exponentially. In Genesis chapter 31, verses 2-3, we read of the mounting jealousy among Laban's sons and God's directive for Jacob to return to his homeland. Jacob overheard Laban's sons accusing, "Jacob has taken everything that belonged to our father and gained all this wealth at our father's expense." Jacob also observed that Laban's attitude toward him had noticeably changed. At this time, the Lord spoke to Jacob, saying, "Return to the land of your ancestors and to your relatives, and I will be with you." The covert planning of Jacob's departure is recounted in Genesis chapter 31, verses 4-13, where he explains the circumstances to Rachel and Leah, sharing a dream in which God commanded him to leave. Jacob's wives, Rachel and Leah, fully support his decision, recognizing the unjust treatment they had endured at their father Laban's hands. Genesis chapter 31 verses 17 to 21 narrates the secretive escape that took place while Laban was shearing his sheep. Jacob placed his wives and children on camels and led his livestock and possessions, everything he had acquired in Padan Aram, toward the land of Canaan, where his father Isaac resided. While Laban was occupied shearing his sheep, Rachel secretly stole her father's household gods. Additionally, Jacob avoided informing Laban, the Aramean, of his plans, effectively deceiving him about the escape. Jacob fled with all his possessions, crossing the Euphrates River and traveling toward the hill country of Gilead. Rachel's theft of the household gods introduces an additional layer of complexity, perhaps reflecting her struggle to fully sever ties with her family and heritage. The relentless pursuit by Laban is detailed in Genesis chapter 31, verses 22 to 25. On the third day, Laban was told that Jacob had fled, taking his relatives with him. Laban pursued Jacob for 7 days and caught up with him in the hill country of Gilead. Then God came to Laban the Aramean in a dream at night and said to him, "Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad." Jacob had pitched his tent in the hill country of Gilead when Laban overtook him, and Laban and his relatives camped there too. The warning that God gave to Laban in a dream serves as a clear example of how God continued to watch over and safeguard Jacob, even during times when Jacob's behavior might have been seen as less than upright. The confrontation between Jacob and Laban on Mount Gilead is recounted in Genesis chapter 31, verses 26 to 42. Laban accuses Jacob of leaving secretly and taking his household gods without permission. Unaware of Rachel's theft, Jacob confidently permits Laban to conduct a thorough search of the camp. Rachel, seated on the stolen gods, cleverly deceives her father by claiming she cannot rise due to her menstrual cycle, effectively stopping him from discovering their hiding place. Jacob, growing exasperated, finally voices his grievances about Laban's unjust treatment over the past 2 decades. "For 20 years I was with you. Your sheep and goats did not miscarry, nor did I eat rams from your flocks. I did not bring you animals torn by wild beasts. I bore the loss myself, and you demanded payment from me for whatever was stolen by day or night. The heat consumed me in the daytime, and the cold at night, and sleep fled from my eyes. It was like this for 20 years I was in your household. I worked for you 14 years for your 2 daughters and 6 years for your flocks, and you changed my wages 10 times. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham and the fear of Isaac had not been with me, you would surely have sent me away empty-handed. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham and the fear of Isaac had not been with me, you would surely have sent me away empty-handed." Jacob's fervent speech highlights his deep awareness of the wrongs he has endured and underscores his strong conviction that God has intervened on his behalf to bring about justice. In Genesis chapter 31, verses 43 to 55, we see the establishment of a covenant between Jacob and Laban. They constructed a heap of stones to serve as a symbolic witness to their mutual agreement not to harm one another. Laban named the heap Jegar-Sahadutha in Aramaic, while Jacob referred to it as Galid in Hebrew, both meaning heap of witness. Genesis chapter 31 verse 55 marks the moment of their final separation. Early the next morning, Laban kissed his grandchildren and his daughters and blessed them. He then departed and returned to his home. This moment marked the conclusion of an important chapter in Jacob's life. No longer a young man, he departed from Haran as the head of a thriving and sizable family. The brief mention of Jacob's encounter with angels at Mahanaim in Genesis 32, 1 through 2 is rich in meaning. Jacob also went on his way, and the angels of God met him. When Jacob saw them, he said, "This is the camp of God." So he named that place Mahanaim. This extraordinary moment reinforced the assurance of God's unwavering presence and care, reminding Jacob that he was not alone. It symbolized divine support during a crucial juncture in his life, as he braced himself for the daunting prospect of meeting his estranged brother Esau after years of separation and unresolved conflict. Genesis 32:3-21 recounts Jacob's meticulous preparations for his highly anticipated and anxiety-filled reunion with Esau. Jacob sends messengers ahead to inform Esau of his arrival. However, when the messengers return, they bring alarming news. Esau is approaching with 400 men. Overwhelmed by fear and dread, Jacob begins to strategize ways to protect his family and possessions from what he believes could be an impending attack. Driven by a combination of fear and resourcefulness, Jacob splits his caravan into two separate camps, reasoning if Esau comes and attacks one camp, the other camp may escape. This pragmatic decision reflected both his deep apprehension and his determination to preserve at least part of his family and belongings in the event of an aggressive confrontation. Jacob's response to his fear is a heartfelt and humble prayer to God, as recorded in Genesis 32, 9-12. O God of my father Abraham, God of my father Isaac, Lord, you who said to me, go back to your country and your relatives, and I will make you prosper. His prayer reflects a profound reliance on God's promises, even as he grapples with his own sense of unworthiness. I am unworthy of all the kindness and faithfulness you have shown your servant. I had only my staff when I crossed this Jordan, but now I have become two camps. Save me, I pray, from the hand of my brother Esau, for I am afraid he will come and attack me, and also the mothers with their children. But you have said, I will surely make you prosper, and will make your descendants like the sand of the sea, which cannot be counted. Through this fervent prayer, Jacob reveals the profound tension within him, a mix of fear and faith. He clings to God's promises of prosperity and protection, while candidly admitting his own feelings of inadequacy and helplessness. Alongside his prayers, Jacob takes proactive steps by assembling an impressive gift for Esau, strategically dividing it into several groups and sending them ahead with the hope of softening Esau's heart and averting any potential hostility. This gesture demonstrates Jacob's diplomatic efforts and desire for reconciliation. After 2 decades of separation, Jacob's careful preparations culminate in a pivotal moment. The young fugitive who fled in fear returns as a wealthy and influential patriarch, yet he remains deeply aware of the unresolved consequences of his past actions and his ongoing dependence on God's guidance and grace. Genesis 32, 22-32 recounts one of the most mysterious and life-changing moments in Jacob's journey, his nocturnal wrestling match with an angel at Peniel. That night, Jacob got up and took his 2 wives, his 2 female servants, and his 11 sons, and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. After he had sent them across the stream, he sent over all his possessions. So Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him till daybreak. This intense physical and spiritual confrontation represents Jacob's internal struggle, not only with the guilt and fears of his past, but also with the uncertainties and responsibilities of his future. It encapsulates a turning point where Jacob wrestles not just with a mysterious figure, but with the identity and destiny God has in store for him. When the man saw that he could not overpower him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip so that his hip was wrenched as he wrestled with the man. Then the man said, "Let me go, for it is daybreak." This moment underscores both Jacob's unyielding determination and the mysterious figure's supernatural power. The injury to Jacob's hip would serve as a lasting physical reminder of this transformative encounter, marking him forever as one who wrestled with the divine. But Jacob replied, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." This insistence reveals Jacob's recognition of the significance of the moment and his unrelenting desire for God's favor. The man asked him, "What is your name?" "Jacob," he answered. By stating his name, Jacob confronts his identity, the deceiver, and prepares for the transformation God is about to bring into his life. Then the man said, "Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans and have overcome." The renaming of Jacob to Israel symbolizes a complete transformation in his life. The title supplanter, associated with his earlier cunning ways, is replaced with a new identity, one who struggles and prevails with God. This pivotal moment redefines Jacob's relationship with God and his role in the covenant as the forefather of a chosen nation. From this life-changing encounter, Jacob emerges both blessed and broken. The limp caused by the injury to his thigh becomes a permanent reminder of his struggle and victory, serving as a tangible sign of his profound interaction with the divine and the cost of transformation. The long-dreaded reunion with Esau finally takes place in Genesis 33, 1-11. Jacob looked up and saw Esau approaching, and with him were 400 men. So he divided the children among Leah, Rachel, and the 2 maids. He put the maids and their children in front, Leah and her children next, and Rachel and Joseph last. He himself went on ahead and bowed down to the ground 7 times as he approached his brother. Jacob's deliberate gestures of bowing 7 times as he approaches Esau illustrate his humility and earnestness in seeking to mend their fractured relationship. This act of submission signifies his readiness to make amends for past wrongs and his hope for peace. Contrary to Jacob's fears, Esau's reaction is unexpectedly warm and heartfelt. But Esau ran to meet Jacob and embraced him. He threw his arms around his neck and kissed him, and they wept. The reunion between Jacob and Esau is deeply moving and filled with unexpected grace. Esau's embrace and tears reveal the healing of past grievances, demonstrating that time, coupled with God's providence, can mend even the deepest wounds. The subsequent conversation between Jacob and Esau reveals the generous spirit of both brothers. Despite Esau's warm reception, Jacob insists that he accept the lavish gifts he prepared. "Please accept the gift that was brought to you, for God has been gracious to me, and I have all I need." This act underscores Jacob's gratitude to God and his genuine desire to demonstrate goodwill and repair their relationship. Following this heartfelt reunion, Jacob and Esau part on peaceful terms. Genesis 33:16-17 notes, "That day, Esau started on his way back to Seir. Jacob, however, went to Succoth, where he built a place for himself and made shelters for his livestock. That is why the place is called Succoth." Jacob's settlement first in Succoth and then in Shechem signifies the start of a fresh chapter in his life. These moves not only represent his journey towards stability, but also highlight God's continued guidance as he navigates new challenges and opportunities. Genesis 33:18-20 recounts, "After Jacob came from Paddan Aram, he arrived safely at the city of Shechem in Canaan and camped within sight of the city. For 100 pieces of silver, he bought from the sons of Hamor, the father of Shechem, the plot of ground where he pitched his tent. There he erected an altar and called it El Elohe Israel." Jacob's sense of peace and stability in Shechem is abruptly disrupted by a tragic incident involving his daughter Dinah, as recounted in Genesis 34. This event would lead to a chain reaction of violence and tension, deeply affecting Jacob's family and their standing among the local inhabitants. Genesis 34 narrates the heartbreaking violation of Dinah. Dinah, the daughter Leah had borne to Jacob, went out to visit the women of the land. When Shechem, son of Hamor the Hivite, the ruler of that area, saw her, he took her and raped her. The assault on Dinah becomes the catalyst for a series of tragic and violent events. Although Shechem professes love for Dinah and seeks to marry her, the outrage felt by Jacob's sons, especially Simeon and Levi, drives them to craft a deceptive and deadly plan for revenge, intensifying the tension between Jacob's family and the local community. Under the guise of reconciliation, Jacob's sons deceive the Shechemites by demanding that all the men undergo circumcision as a prerequisite for the marriage between Dinah and Shechem. However, while the Shechemites are weakened and recovering, Simeon and Levi launch a brutal attack on the city, killing all the men and exacting a devastating vengeance that escalates the conflict to new heights. Jacob is deeply troubled by the consequences of his son's actions. Genesis 3,430 records. "Then Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, 'You have brought trouble on me by making me a stench to the Canaanites and Perizzites. The people living in this land, we are few in number. If they join forces against me and attack me, I and my household will be destroyed.' Following this deeply unsettling event, God directs Jacob to return to Bethel. This instruction signifies a call for spiritual renewal and a reminder of God's enduring covenant with him. Genesis 35:2-3 illustrates Jacob's leadership as he prepares his household for a sacred encounter with God. "So Jacob said to his household and to all who were with him, 'Get rid of the foreign gods you have with you, and purify yourselves, and change your clothes.' Then come, let us go up to Bethel, where I will build an altar to God who answered me in my day of distress and who has been with me wherever I have gone." At Bethel, God reaffirms the covenantal promises given to Jacob and solidifies his transformation by formally changing his name to Israel. Genesis 35:10 through 12 recounts, "God said to him, 'Your name is Jacob, but you will no longer be called Jacob. Your name will be Israel.' So he named him Israel." This name change, signifying one who struggles with God, reflects Jacob's spiritual journey and his role as the patriarch of the chosen people who will carry forward God's promises. God's words to Jacob underscore the continuation of his covenant with Abraham and Isaac. "I am God Almighty. Be fruitful and increase in number. A nation and a community of nations will come from you, and kings will be among your descendants. The land I gave to Abraham and Isaac I give to you, and I will give this land to your descendants after you." These promises reaffirm Jacob's role in the divine plan to establish a great nation and highlight the enduring legacy that will stem from his lineage. Genesis 35:16 through 20 recounts, "Then they moved on from Bethel while they were still some distance from Ephrath. Rachel began to give birth and had great difficulty, and as she was having great difficulty in childbirth, the midwife said to her, 'Don't despair, for you have another son.' As she breathed her last, for she was dying, she named her son Ben-Oni, but his father named him Benjamin. So Rachel died and was buried on the way to Ephrath, that is Bethlehem. As for me, if I am bereaved, I am bereaved." The loss of Rachel during Benjamin's birth deals an emotional blow to Jacob, signaling the end of a cherished partnership that had defined much of his personal life. Her passing represents both the closing of a significant chapter and a moment of profound sorrow that would leave a lasting imprint on Jacob's heart. Genesis 35:22 highlights a troubling episode that adds to Jacob's trials. While Israel was living in that region, Reuben went in and slept with his father's concubine Bilhah, and Israel heard of it. Reuben's grievous act undermines his standing as the eldest son and creates a rift within the family. This offense not only tarnishes his reputation, but also significantly impacts his inheritance and role in the future of the Israelite tribes, illustrating how personal actions can reverberate across generations. Thus Jacob's life is characterized by moments of profound reconciliation and spiritual renewal. At the same time, it is also deeply impacted by personal and family tragedies that leave lasting impressions, molding his character and influencing the destiny of his lineage in significant ways. Genesis 35:27 records a poignant moment in Jacob's life, his return to his father Isaac's household. Jacob came home to his father Isaac in Mamre, near Kiriath Arba, that is Hebron, where Abraham and Isaac had stayed. Jacob's return marks the fulfillment of his life's journey, symbolically bringing him full circle and reconnecting him with his heritage and the promises God made to his ancestors. Genesis 35:28-29 recounts the peaceful passing of Isaac at the age of 180. Isaac lived 180 years. Then he breathed his last and died, and was gathered to his people, old and full of years, and his sons Esau and Jacob buried him. The death of Isaac brings Esau and Jacob together in an act of filial duty, setting aside their past conflicts to honor their father. This moment of shared grief highlights the enduring ties of family, even amidst the fractures and divisions of their lives. The story transitions to focus on Joseph, Jacob's favored son. Genesis 37:3-4 states, "Now Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons, because he had been born to him in his old age, and he made an ornate robe for him. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him." Jacob's overt favoritism toward Joseph reflects the patterns of his own upbringing, where his mother Rebekah favored him over Esau. This inherited dynamic fosters jealousy and animosity among Joseph's brothers, sowing seeds of discord that will profoundly shape their family story. The ornate robe Jacob gives to Joseph, often referred to as the coat of many colors, serves as a vivid material representation of his preferential love. This garment not only distinguishes Joseph from his brothers, but also exacerbates their resentment, becoming a symbol of division within the family. Joseph's prophetic dreams, described in Genesis 37, 5 through 11, further ignite his brother's envy. In the first dream, Joseph envisions his sheaf of wheat rising above his brothers, whose sheaves bow down to him. In the second dream, he sees the sun, moon, and 11 stars bowing to him. These visions, while foreshadowing Joseph's future leadership, are perceived as arrogance by his family and deepen the hostility between him and his brothers. Despite their dismissive and hostile reactions, Joseph's dreams hint at his divine destiny to rise to a position of prominence and eventually save his family during a time of great crisis. These dreams, misunderstood and resented, lay the groundwork for the extraordinary twists in Joseph's journey. The betrayal of Joseph by his brothers marks a devastating and pivotal moment in their family's narrative. Genesis 37:18-20 describes their premeditated malice. But they saw him from a distance, and before he reached them, they plotted to kill him. "Here comes that dreamer," they said. "Come now, let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns and say that a ferocious animal devoured him." Their jealousy culminates in a shocking act of betrayal as they conspire to rid themselves of Joseph and his perceived superiority. Reuben, the eldest brother, attempts to mitigate the situation and prevent outright murder. Genesis 37:21-22 reveals his plea. "Let's not take his life. Don't shed any blood. Throw him into this cistern here in the wilderness, but don't lay a hand on him." Hoping to later rescue Joseph and return him to their father, Reuben's partial intervention spares Joseph from immediate death, but fails to prevent the unfolding tragedy. Judah's practical suggestion to sell Joseph ultimately prevails over the initial plan of murder. Genesis 37:26-28 recounts, "Judah said to his brothers, 'What will we gain if we kill our brother and cover up his blood? Come, let's sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay our hands on him. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh and blood.'" This proposal reflects Judah's pragmatic approach, and while it spares Joseph's life, it reveals the brothers' willingness to prioritize their gain over familial bonds. Selling Joseph into slavery would become a pivotal moment, altering the course of his life and the destiny of their family. The brothers consent to Judah's plan, seizing the opportunity presented by passing Midianite merchants. They pull Joseph from the cistern and sell him for 20 shekels of silver to the Ishmaelites, who take him to Egypt. This cruel transaction not only reflects their jealousy, but also sets Joseph on a path of suffering and eventual triumph, as God's plan unfolds through their betrayal. The brothers execute a calculated deception to hide their crime. Genesis 37:31-33 explains, "Then they got Joseph's robe, slaughtered a goat, and dipped the robe in the blood. They took the ornate robe back to their father and said, 'We found this. Examine it to see whether it is your son's robe.'" This act of trickery not only covers up their betrayal, but also plunges Jacob into unimaginable grief as the bloodied robe convinces him that Joseph has been killed by a wild animal. Upon seeing the blood-soaked robe, Jacob immediately identifies it as Joseph's and concludes the worst. "It is my son's robe. Some ferocious animal has devoured him. Joseph has surely been torn to pieces." This mistaken belief devastates Jacob as he envisions the violent end of his beloved son. The anguish of Jacob's mourning is vividly portrayed in Genesis 37:34-35. "Then Jacob tore his clothes, put on sackcloth, and mourned for his son many days. All his sons and daughters came to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. 'No,' he said, 'I will continue to mourn until I join my son in the grave.' So his father wept for him." Jacob's profound sorrow and refusal to be comforted reflect the depth of his love for Joseph, leaving him heartbroken and inconsolable. The loss of Joseph casts a long shadow over Jacob's life. Believing his son to be dead, Jacob carries an unbearable burden of grief, a sorrow so profound that no words or actions from his family can offer solace. This prolonged period of mourning becomes a defining aspect of Jacob's later years. The story shifts to a crisis of survival as famine strikes Canaan. Genesis 42:1-2 narrates Jacob's proactive response. When Jacob learned that there was grain in Egypt, he said to his sons, "Why do you just keep looking at each other?" His question reflects both frustration and urgency, as he pushes his sons to act and secure food for the family, setting the stage for a dramatic reunion. Jacob's instructions underscore the dire circumstances. He continued, "I have heard that there is grain in Egypt. Go down there and buy some for us so that we may live and not die." This decision to send his sons to Egypt, though born of necessity, unknowingly propels the family toward an extraordinary reconciliation orchestrated by God. By sending his sons to Egypt to purchase grain, Jacob unwittingly triggers a sequence of events that will bring his family full circle. This journey becomes the catalyst for uncovering Joseph's fate and reuniting the family after years of separation and hidden pain. The detainment of Simeon in Egypt and the demand to bring Benjamin create a profound crisis for Jacob. The detainment of Simeon in Egypt and the demand to bring Benjamin create a profound crisis for Jacob. Genesis 42:36 reflects his overwhelming despair. "You have deprived me of my children. Joseph is no more. Simeon is no more. And now you want to take Benjamin? Everything is against me." These words illustrate Jacob's deep-seated grief and his reluctance to risk losing Benjamin, the only remaining son of Rachel, the wife he loved most dearly. Jacob's hesitation to let Benjamin go stems from the heartbreak of his earlier losses. Having already lost Joseph and with Simeon held in captivity, the thought of jeopardizing Benjamin's safety is almost unbearable. This fear reflects his protective instincts and his struggle to balance love and responsibility. The second journey to Egypt with Benjamin marks a critical turning point. It is Judah's heartfelt insistence and personal guarantee of Benjamin's safety that eventually persuades Jacob to let him go. Judah's leadership and willingness to accept responsibility showcase his maturity and foreshadow his pivotal role in the family's reconciliation. Genesis 43:11-14 captures Jacob's reluctant blessing for the mission. "Then their father Israel said to them, 'If it must be, then do this. Put some of the best products of the land in your bags and take them down to the man as a gift. A little balm, a little honey, some spices and myrrh, some pistachio nuts and almonds.'" This directive reflects Jacob's practical wisdom and his hope to soften the Egyptian ruler's stance with gifts. Despite his inner turmoil, Jacob is taking necessary steps to ensure his family's survival, balancing pragmatism with faith in God. Jacob advises his sons to carry double the silver to repay any debt caused by the earlier mix-up, saying, "Perhaps it was a mistake." This suggestion shows Jacob's attention to detail and his desire to avoid further complications with the Egyptian official. His inclusion of Benjamin in the group reveals his painful but necessary decision to risk his beloved youngest son to fulfill the demands placed upon them. Jacob invokes the name of God Almighty, El Shaddai, in his plea for mercy. "May God Almighty grant you mercy before the man." This heartfelt prayer underscores Jacob's reliance on divine intervention to bring about a favorable outcome. By entrusting Benjamin and the mission to God, Jacob demonstrates his faith in the midst of overwhelming circumstances. Jacob's poignant declaration, "As for me, if I am bereaved, I am bereaved," reveals his acceptance of the possible loss of Benjamin. This moment reflects Jacob's surrender to God's will, a significant act of faith for a man who has faced many trials and losses throughout his life. One of the most moving moments in the Bible is Joseph's dramatic and heartfelt revelation to his brothers in Genesis 45. After years of separation and heartache, Joseph chooses a path of reconciliation rather than retribution, unveiling God's greater purpose in his life. This moment not only highlights Joseph's deep emotional struggle, but also reflects his unwavering trust in God's plan. When the moment of truth arrives, Joseph sends his brothers back to deliver a life-changing message to their father. Genesis 45:9-11 records his words, "Now hurry back to my father and say to him, 'This is what your son Joseph says. God has made me Lord of all Egypt. Come down to me. Don't delay.'" Joseph's urgency reflects his longing to reunite with Jacob and his gratitude for God's providence, which had transformed his suffering into an opportunity to save his family. "You shall live in the region of Goshen and be near me. You, your children and grandchildren, your flocks and herds and all you have, I will provide for you there, because 5 years of famine are still to come. Otherwise, you and your household and all who belong to you will become destitute. Joseph extends this heartfelt assurance to his family, promising safety, provision, and a life free from the devastation of the famine. This offer reflects both his authority in Egypt and his deep love for his family, fulfilling God's plan to protect Jacob's lineage. The astonishing invitation for Jacob to move to Egypt begins with shocking news. Genesis 45:26-28 recounts that his sons told him, "Joseph is still alive. In fact, he is ruler of all Egypt." Jacob was stunned. He did not believe them. Jacob's initial reaction reveals the emotional weight of decades of grief and disbelief at such unexpected and miraculous news. But when they told him everything Joseph had said to them, and when he saw the carts Joseph had sent to carry him back, the spirit of their father Jacob revived. And Israel said, "I'm convinced my son Joseph is still alive. I will go and see him before I die." This moment marks a significant emotional shift for Jacob, as his despair gives way to renewed hope. The sight of Joseph's provisions and his words of invitation inspire Jacob to prepare for the journey to Egypt, eager to reunite with his long-lost son. Jacob's hesitation to leave Canaan, the promised land, is understandable given the significance of the decision. However, God reassures him at Beersheba, as described in Genesis 46:2-4. And God spoke to Israel in a vision at night and said, "Jacob, Jacob." "Here I am," he replied. God's words provide the assurance Jacob needs, confirming that this move aligns with his divine purpose and plan for the family to prosper and grow into a great nation. Then God said, "I am God, the God of your father. Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for I will make you into a great nation there. I will go down to Egypt with you, and I will surely bring you back again, and Joseph's own hand will close your eyes." These comforting words from God provide Jacob with the courage and assurance he needs to undertake the journey. This divine promise confirms that God's presence will be with him and his family, transforming Egypt into a place where they will grow into a great nation, while holding on to the hope of eventually returning to the promised land. The account in Genesis 46:29 vividly describes the journey to Egypt and the long-awaited reunion between father and son. Joseph, overwhelmed with joy, had his chariot made ready and went to Goshen to meet his father Israel. As soon as Joseph appeared before him, he threw his arms around his father and wept for a long time. This emotional moment is the culmination of years of separation and sorrow, bringing healing to their relationship and fulfilling God's plan to restore their family. Israel said to Joseph, "Now I am ready to die, since I have seen for myself that you are still alive." Jacob's words reveal the deep contentment and gratitude he feels after reuniting with Joseph, knowing that his son is safe and thriving under God's providential care. This statement signifies the emotional closure Jacob has longed for, as he prepares to live out his remaining years in peace. Jacob's new chapter in Goshen brings stability and peace for his family. Genesis 47:7-10 recounts a significant moment when Joseph brought his father Jacob in and presented him before Pharaoh. After Jacob blessed Pharaoh, Pharaoh asked him, "How old are you?" This meeting highlights Jacob's dignity and faith as he blesses Pharaoh and reflects on his life, saying, "The years of my pilgrimage are 130. My years have been few and difficult, and they do not equal the years of the pilgrimage of my fathers." Despite his challenges, Jacob's act of blessing Pharaoh demonstrates his recognition of God's role in the unfolding story of his family and the nations. Then Jacob blessed Pharaoh and went out from his presence. Jacob's parting blessing is an act of faith and a symbol of the covenant relationship between God and his chosen people. By blessing Pharaoh, Jacob acknowledges the ruler's kindness and reflects his own role as a bearer of divine promises meant to impact all nations. The closing chapter of Jacob's life is marked by tranquility and blessings for his family. Genesis 47:27-28 captures this season of growth. The Israelites settled in Egypt, in the region of Goshen. They acquired property there and were fruitful and increased greatly in number. Jacob lived in Egypt 17 years, and the years of his life were 147. During these final years, Jacob witnessed his family's flourishing and experienced the fulfillment of God's promise to preserve and prosper his descendants, even in a foreign land. In Genesis 48 and 49, Jacob's final blessings carry profound significance. He adopts Joseph's sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, saying, They will be reckoned as mine, elevating them to the status of his own sons. This act not only honors Joseph, but also ensures that his legacy is doubly represented among the tribes of Israel. Jacob's blessings reveal his understanding of God's covenant promises and his role in passing them on to future generations. In a poignant parallel to his own life, Jacob deliberately crosses his hands during the blessing, bestowing the greater favor on the younger Ephraim, illustrating God's sovereignty over human traditions. The prophecies Jacob delivers to his 12 sons in Genesis 49 are deeply symbolic, offering profound insights into the roles their descendants will play in shaping the future of the nation of Israel. Each of Jacob's sons is given a unique blessing, or at times a rebuke, that outlines their character and foretells the role their tribe will play in Israel's future. Jacob provides explicit and unwavering instructions regarding his burial, underscoring his desire to be laid to rest with his ancestors in the Promised Land. Genesis 49:29 through 32 records Jacob's final instructions. I am about to be gathered to my people. Bury me with my fathers in the cave, in the field of Ephron the Hittite, the cave in the field of Machpelah near Mamre in Canaan, which Abraham bought along with the field as a burial place from Ephron the Hittite. There Abraham and his wife Sarah were buried. There Isaac and his wife Rebekah were buried, and there I buried Leah. The account of Jacob's death in the extended national mourning in Egypt, as detailed in Genesis 49:33 to 50:03, highlights the profound respect and honor he received. After imparting his final instructions to his sons, Jacob pulled his feet up into the bed, took his last breath, and peacefully joined his ancestors in eternal rest. Joseph embraced his father with deep sorrow, weeping over him and tenderly kissing him in a final act of love and farewell. Joseph ordered the physicians under his care to embalm his father, Israel, ensuring a dignified preparation for burial. The physicians embalmed Jacob, a process that took 40 days as customary, and the Egyptians expressed their respect by mourning him for an extended period of 70 days. The majestic funeral procession and burial in the cave of Machpelah, as detailed in Genesis 57:13, signify the conclusion of Jacob's life on earth while ensuring his enduring legacy lives on through his descendants. Jacob's journey, filled with trials, conflicts, and ultimate reconciliation, illustrates the depth of God's faithfulness in guiding flawed individuals toward his divine purpose. His story mirrors the complexities of human life, offering timeless lessons about perseverance, redemption, and trust in God's promises. Jacob's life reminds us that God is capable of transforming our shortcomings and challenges into vital parts of his greater divine plan. What insights have you gained from Jacob's life? How does his story, with its blend of challenges and triumphs, resonate with your own journey of faith? If this video inspired or encouraged you, consider sharing it with someone who could also be blessed by this message. Jacob's journey serves as a powerful reminder that true transformation is possible for anyone willing to trust in God's plan. Did you enjoy this content? Be sure to subscribe to the channel and activate notifications so you'll never miss our upcoming videos about biblical characters and the invaluable lessons their lives offer. Remember, just as God's hand was evident in Jacob's life, he is eager to work in your life as well. See you in the next video.